between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
I know my destiny. I know my destiny. I know my destiny. I know my destiny.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the VRRC, and it is time for the Championship Showdown in the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. We have travelled the world visiting some of international motorsport's great racing venues, and tonight it all concludes at the home of British motorsport. The Silverstone Grand Prix circuit will play host to the final two races of what has been a nail-biting season. 4 drivers arriving here with the realistic shot at claiming the title. It is going to be a fantastic night of entertainment. Great to have you all on board for the next couple of hours. As ever, it's Andy McEwen in the commentary box, joined by Jack Oliphant. And Jack, well, we got here. It does seem to have flown by this season. A season that I think has really built nicely from the start of the year, the 8 weeks where drivers were still figuring out the cars. We weren't quite sure what racing we were going to get. I think it's got progressively better as the season's gone on. And now, 4 drivers, a shootout over 2 races at Silverstone. It doesn't get much better than that.
No, it doesn't. And to be honest, I was sort of like just pondering around today, just sort of like itching to get going. It's not often I say that about jumping onto work or anything like that, but it's I am really looking forward to this one. As you said, the home of British motorsport, in my opinion, is the home of motorsport. I don't care what Daytona has to say about it, but the championship, you're right, is boiled to a lovely simmer right now, and it's just about to explode, I'm sure, before, in the next 40 minutes of racing. We've got 4 different championship contenders and 3 different cars as well, Andy, which I really think is testament to how we've bopped them all.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there have been conversations, you'll be surprised to hear, among the drivers this season about which car is quickest and which car isn't quickest, but ultimately, by the end of the season, as Jack says, we've ended up with a pretty even spread of cars that have either done well in the championship or been able to get race victories. We saw the Porsche, for example, a week ago, claiming a victory in race 2, and Carl Felvers, Nicky Taylor, they've been at the front of the Porsches too. So it's been a very, very entertaining season, and it really is all down to the hard work that's been done behind the scenes to allow that to happen. So here we are at the final round, as we have said. The penultimate round at Suzuka a week ago was the second part of a Japanese double header. We started the season back at the beginning of February at the Bahrain International Circuit. We then headed to Italy, to Turkey, to South Africa, to America, Fuji and Suzuka in Japan, and tonight it all concludes at Silverstone. A week ago, 2 very interesting races. The first race, it must be said, was fairly processional affair. That's not to say that it was uneventful. There was stuff going on, but the top 3 on the grid remained the top 3 by the end of the race, with Scott Bugner claiming a victory. He backed that up then with 3rd place in race number 2, which meant that he was the top point scorer of the night and moved into the championship lead at the expense of his teammate Joel Lask, who you'll notice does not appear on that graphic. That's because Joel didn't have a terrible night. He was 3rd in race 1, 4th in race 2, but just misses out on the top 3 points. Second highest point scorer, not even a championship contender, Oliver Gibson, who I mentioned had that race victory in race 2. He was 8th in race 1, and that ended up being a reasonably good points haul. And Elliot Dalton-Ayres, despite the fact that it seemed the Ford GT was not superbly well suited to Fuji, came out with the 3rd highest points haul of the night. And Jack, that mixed up the championship table quite nicely coming into these final 2 races.
Yeah, I think we spoke about Elliot Dalton-Ayres and his ability to just sort of pick up the points out of sort of nowhere, really, out of sort of nothing finishing positions, it seems. But he's been absolutely flying, and that's why he is in 4th place, as you can see. But Scott Bugner and Joel Lask are the top 2, and they're only separated by 4 points, are the teammates. Eric Axelsen, always there or thereabouts. He's 11 points back in 3rd with Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who I've just mentioned. Only 12 points back from Scott Bugner. That's not 12 points away from Eric Axelsen, ladies and gentlemen. That's 12 points from the championship leader. So it could all swing in just one race, let alone the fact we've got 2. There is also a fight for 5th position between Josh Martin, Kyle Felvers and Oliver Gibson. And if anything, the maths is a little bit more simple for these drivers. There's 6 points in it, and they've all missed a round, which means drop scores are pretty much null. It is how they finish out there on circuit this evening. Nicky Taylor, Reese Bell and Andy Carroll all round out the field, but they've all been stars in their own rights at certain points through the championship, haven't they, Andy? Especially Reese Bell and Andy Carroll picking up victories and podium positions and driver of the rounds. It's been a really good sort of feel-good factor about this championship, I would say, in terms of the spread of the podium sitters.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and 12 points is not a big margin. Worth bearing in mind that if you cast your mind back to the Touring Car Championship, that was our most recent one, Josh Martin, of course, wrapped that title up. Well, he arrived at the final round at Brands Hatch 8 points off the championship lead, and won the championship by 4 points. 8 plus 4 is 12. So he gained 12 points on the then championship leader going into that final round. That is exactly what Elliot Dalton-Ayres needs to do if he is to claim his first championship with the VRRC and really complete that sort of underdog status and sweep in to take the championship. So history could repeat itself tonight, and this is a circuit I think that will suit Elliot and the Ford GT. As Jack said, it's not just about what's going on, though, at the very front of the championship table, because we have prizes that stretch back further than ever this season. As ever, the top 3 in the driver standings at the end of the night will take home some pretty tasty prizes. The Cammus Direct Drive Sim Racing Wheel for our eventual champion, along with the Champions Trophy. There is a GTF1 Sim Race seat for our championship runner-up, as well as the runners-up trophy, and third place receives a third-place trophy and the 27-inch gaming display courtesy of Aegon. However, if you finish in the top 5, you get a prize, because fourth-place driver will receive 2 hours of driver coaching at the VRRC, and then that really entertaining fight, we've got really a 3-way fight for 5th place in the points. Well, they're all vying for 1 hour of free sim practice at the VRRC base. There is also the prize draw for all drivers that compete in at least 7 of the 8 rounds and finish the championship outside of that top 5. They're entered into a prize draw for a chance to win one of 2 1-hour sim practice sessions at the VRRC as well. So even if you're not in the top 5, you've still got a chance of walking away with something. There's also, of course, the Driver of the Round award, which is decided by us, the broadcast team, with sensible input from you guys at home as well. So do let us know who is catching your eye as the night goes on. So that sets us all up beautifully, I think, for what should be an entertaining night of action. Qualifying, I can tell you, has just got underway here at Silverstone. So whilst the drivers are making their way out onto the track, getting some heat into the tyres and building themselves up for what could be a crucial qualifying session, let's take a guided tour, courtesy of Lewis Edwards, around the Silverstone Grand Prix track.
Hello everyone and welcome to the final round of the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. I'm Lewis Edwards and I'm going to take you around a lap of Silverstone. Into Abbey now, flick it down 1 gear, use all of the apex curb that you dare, back over to the left hand side of turn 2. Down the gears into second for Village, and we want to keep right to open up the loop. We brake a little bit too early and have to have a little stab to the throttle to get it round. It's important to get a good exit from here as we go through Aintree, easily flat out even in these, and then we go down the straight heading towards Brooklands. We're going to prepare ourselves to brake just before this marker board on the right hand side, down to 3rd gear and then second just at the apex to get that final bit of rotation. Through Luffield now, fight the oversteer on the entry and then get a good exit through here. Don't use too much of this Astro on the exit there. And then we can just cut through Woodcut nicely, and then we're heading towards Copse now. So we're going to go down 2 gears, use the apex curve for a bit of rotation, and don't use any of that AstroTurf on the exit. That really kills your momentum. Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel now. We want to just flick it down a couple of gears for the first part, down another gear, but make sure you're left here to open up this right-hander, which we do nicely. And now we're on to the back straight. So we go through the gears. This might be an opportunity for some slipstream as we head up towards Stowe now. You want to brake just before the curb starts on the left-hand side. Down 3 gears, again taking that gear for rotation quite late on, using up all of the exit for Vale. As we now go into the final chicane, brake as the curb starts, and then use as much of the curb as you dare through here. But make sure not to unsettle the car. We go through Club now, and that completes a lap of Silverstone.
Well, the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, a venue that is all too familiar for me. I've just spent the weekend there, actually. It was, well, pretty dark and gloomy then as well. And although this qualifying session is supposedly happening at 1:05, it almost looks like it's happening at about 7 o'clock in the evening, doesn't it? But regardless, we've got moody lighting, shall we say, for what should be a very, very intense night of racing. A brilliant racetrack, this, Jack. I know you made the comparison to Daytona, which claims to be the world centre of racing. I think if you gave me the choice between a weekend in Florida or Northamptonshire, I think you know probably which one I'd go for, but I will say that it is a great racetrack. I really, really enjoy the modifications that were made probably more years ago than I thought to the infield section, and it's one that always produces good racing. Long straights, big braking zone, challenging sequences of corners that link together beautifully. It is one of the greats.
It is really. I love Silverstone Grand Prix, and it's not a circuit that we often use here at VRRC, and that's mainly because we do touring car championships, or we do sort of tin tops or MX5s or things like that. Sort of, you know, where the national circuit is maybe a little bit more suited. There's a few more laps. There's a bit like the touring cars in real life, I suppose, when they go to the national circuit, and because there's just more opportunity to see overtaking. But in my opinion, the GTs that we've got here suit this circuit perfectly. And I know you come here nearly every year to commentate on the British GT, Andy. I'm sure you can appreciate the fact that with a full grid like what we've got here, there's nothing quite like it.
No, because the drivers really get to stretch their legs around here. A lot of British tracks in particular have sort of been outgrown a little bit by GT3 cars even, and of course these are GTE cars that we are running in this championship. You think of the likes of your Alton Parks and Brands Hatches, for example, and the cars always feel a little bit restrained. They're spectacular to watch, sure, but it's these big Grand Prix circuits really where GT cars can shine, and that's one of the things I've really enjoyed about this championship. We have visited tracks that, as you say, normally the kind of championships, the formula that we run here, we wouldn't really be able to race at, but we've been able to visit these big Grand Prix circuits, places like Bahrain, places like Suzuka, Fuji a week ago, Istanbul Park, tracks that really do suit these cars particularly well, and I would absolutely throw the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit into that mix as well. We're almost halfway through the qualifying session. The track conditions still improving, as has been the case all season long. The quickest lap times tending to come when the track has been rubbered up in the final few minutes. One interesting thing of note, though, has been that Eric Axelsen, who's just died for the pit lane, initially, Jack, went out on medium tyres, set a lap time that at the moment is good enough for second on the grid, but he has now popped back out onto the track on the, in theory, faster soft tyres. So maybe that was a little bit of an exploration in preparation for the races later on, because tyre management around here could be a big talking point.
Yeah, I could only imagine that it's, as you said, a bit of an experimentation, almost using it as a bit of a test to see what the ultimate lap time could get out of the mediums would be in comparison to the softs. But again, they're not entirely comparable because the track state is continuously changing here in the qualifying session. Maybe that's why he thought it wasn't really worth it to go out there on the softs at all. You might as well learn something on the mediums, because you are going to get those faster times a little later on, as Elliot Dalton-Ayres decides to, and Kyle Felvers, to be fair, although he's not going to go quicker that way. Elliot Dalton-Ayres decided to try and go a little bit quicker through the Chapel section of Maggots and Beckett, as Kyle Felvers gets a little bit wrong on the exit as well.
Yeah, well, Nicky Taylor had gone straight off as well there, so that was three cars in quick succession getting Maggots and Beckett's completely wrong, and Kyle Felvers the most spectacular of the lot, and hopefully didn't make contact with the barrier. It was hard to tell from that camera angle, but if he did, the car will be damaged, and he'll have to limp back to the pit lane for repairs. So at the moment then, Joel Lask is on the pole position. Now, what's at stake in this qualifying session? It's not just the track position for race one. There is also a point for the driver who qualifies on pole position. Given how tight this championship table looks at the moment, just 12 points covering the top four, every single point will matter. And again, to go back to Josh Martin's superb championship run at Brands Hatch a week ago, a few months ago, I should say, where he managed to snatch the championship from fourth place going in. He got that pole position point. He then went on to win race one with fastest lap, and that really is what set him up for the championship. So all of the drivers now will be extra aware, Jack, of how crucial every one of these sessions is. Not just getting the race victories and the podiums, but going for those fastest laps and going for pole position too.
The concentration levels have to be sky high, effectively, don't they, for all of this evening? I mean, there's no ice cream before this trek out to Silverstone. They're going to have proper protein and concentration food out there, because it is really all about every single little point is worth a lot. So I'm looking forward to it, to be honest. If we're talking about practice, though, again, everybody was on the practice server for probably a good hour before we went live. We're talking about the championship contenders. Well, the top three in the championship, the top three in practice. So it really should bode well to a competitive evening.
I think so, absolutely. And as we know, these qualifying sessions tend to come to the boil inside the last 3 or 4 minutes or so. So keep an eye to the likes of Elliot Dalton-Ayres to perhaps move up from 6th place on the grid. Dalton-Ayres, it's worth pointing out, has not always excelled in qualifying this season, though. He is definitely a title contender coming into this round, but his qualifying results so far, 6th, 3rd, pole, 5th, 6th, 2nd, and then 7th a week ago at Suzuka. He actually had his worst qualifying effort of the season so far at Suzuka and still managed to come out with a top 5 in race 1 and 2nd in race 2. His key, really, all season long has just been staying out of trouble, something that strangely has proven difficult for this man, Eric Axelsen. Normally Mr. Consistency, Eric Axelsen, but he has had a bit of an up and down season. Somehow, though, Jack, as he always seems able to do, he has come to the final round every bit the championship challenger, which actually at times this season I wasn't convinced would be the case.
No, we've seen lots of mistakes, but then we've seen lots of mistakes by the 2 BMWs as well, and Joel Lask and Scott Bugner. They've come together. They've come together with Eric Axelsen. They've ended up spinning on their own. They've had mistakes going through the field in race 2 on the reverse grids as well. So there's been lots of incidents, really. That's, I think, to be honest, kept sort of Elliot Dalton-Ayres a little bit closer than maybe his overall pace sort of granted, which is why I think into this particular around Silverstone, he might have to get a little bit lucky. I know he's 4th, and that's an obvious thing to say, but I think Joel Lask, Eric Axelsen, and Scott Bugner on pace have a lot more about them than Elliot Dalton-Ayres. That's been shown by qualifying at the moment. I don't think Elliot's going to jump up and start beating Carl Felvis, or he might do, but not get quite as close to Eric Axelsen in 2nd place. I am slightly surprised by Scott Bugner's pace in this qualifying. 4/10 off his teammate is not really where we expected him to be, Andy. And we saw Scott take that championship lead off Joel last week. Could we see it the other way around this week?
Well, indeed so, but then I've always made the argument, remember that we have a ballast in the cars for this championship. As always, there is the overall driver ranking that is taken into account. That accounts for 50% of the ballast calculations. The other 50% is based on recent results and championship standings. So I've always said that it's not necessarily a good thing to be leading the championship into the final round, because very often you are handicapped more by a ballast system, for example, than those who are coming from a bit further behind. That perhaps hands the small advantage to Joel Lask. Given how evenly matched these drivers have been all season long, a few kilograms either way could make a difference in pace, especially around a track like this one where you're changing direction so much, you're braking hard, you're accelerating out of those low speed corners as well. Joel Lask, I'm hoping, is about to prove my point here by setting a new personal best lap. Well, he doesn't actually, stays with a 156.5, but we do see an improvement for Elliot Dalton-Ayres up to 4th place overall, and crucially just quicker than Scott Bugner, the points leader.
Yep, I was clearly wrong. I said that he wouldn't get quicker than Carl Felvis, but he's gone quicker than Scott Bugner. So it's, yeah, I am clearly wrong. But Josh Martin also went a lot faster. Joel Lask put in a purple sector. Nicky Taylor's gone 3 greens on that previous lap to put in his personal best. The track state is getting to the point where we are seeing those fastest times. And Joel Lask, who was purple sector 1 in the last lap, has just gone green again as Ethan Hill finds himself spinning round, was it, potentially? That's not what he needed on his potentially final lap. If he doesn't get quite up to pace for the rest of it, he could miss out on another lap. So that's a bit of a shame for Ethan Hill. But Joel Lask and Elliot Dalton-Ayres, green sector 1. Scott Bugner's going quicker. Carl Felvis is as well. This is going to be really, really tight towards the end of this sort of last, I don't know, 30 seconds. Not a lot of them will be able to get an extra lap in.
No, well, Scott Bugner to pole position, a 146.4, so by 82 thousandths of a second, the championship leader is back at the top again. But of course, the track conditions continuing to improve. Every lap that gets ticked off by each and every driver will have a small will lead to a small improvement in track grip levels, and so it could well be that the last driver across the line has a small advantage. Eric Axelsen has just gone purple in sector 1, so he is improving upon his current 3rd place time. The next 2 of note, though, that will come through will be Joel Lask and Elliot Dalton-Ayres. They are at club corner as Axelsen barrels down through Maggots and Beckett, and look at this, he might just get a bit of a slipstream here from Ethan Hill ahead of him, who we know is not on a full flying lap. No, Ethan pulls out of the way, so no advantage there for Axelsen. Here come Lask and Dalton-Ayres though. Joel Lask needs to find the best part of a 10th of a second to move back to provisional pole, and will have time for one more lap if he needs it. Across the line he goes. Looks like he'll stay in 2nd. The same is true of Dalton-Ayres in 5th. So what can Eric Axelsen do?
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. He's gone purple and he's gone green. Carl Felvis comes across the line. He's in 6th place at the moment. It looks like he's going to stay there. Eric Axelsson, really, even though everybody looked like they were going to improve on that last lap, nobody really did, apart from the Swedish assassin, potentially, as he comes across the line. He's 3rd place at the moment, 0.3 of a second off pole position, until he sets the standard himself by, you guessed it, about 0.3 of a second ahead of Scott Bugner. That was flying.
Wow, I mean, nearly 4 tenths up the road. That is incredible pace from Eric Axelsson, who so far this season has had 2 pole positions. He has converted both of those pole positions into race wins. And remember the season opener at Bahrain, Axelsson pole race 1, won race 1, won race 2. If he can do that again tonight, there's a good chance that that would be enough for the championship victory. Josh Martin is also up near the front, and remember, Josh is not really, well, he's not a championship contender. He's mathematically out of contention. He will be losing his number 1 sticker for next season, but he is a teammate to Eric Axelsson. That, I think, gives Eric a big advantage because, of course, the 2 LB Motorsport BMWs, they're teammates, but they're both fighting for the championship as well. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, the Lone Ranger in the Ford, really. So the only driver of those top 4 who has help from a teammate, potentially, is Eric Axelsson. He's clearly got the pace with that pole position lap. Let's see whether Josh Martin can get a bit closer to him. No, crosses the line and stays 4th, but he's in the mix, and that could be crucial.
Yeah, and I'm sure Josh Martin had a preference about where he would like to give that number 1. It would probably just be across the garage, wouldn't it, really? And Eric Axelsson, well, across the sea, I should say, or ocean, or whatever it is between us and Sweden. I don't really know what it is, actually, thinking about it. But yes, it is a really quick time by Josh, and it could be pivotal. You're absolutely right. As the Ford GT of Elliot Dalton-Ayres crosses the line with no improvement. So Eric is still out there. I don't think he's going to need to go out and really try and improve, as Carl Felvis shows off his drifting skills and his well, stunt driving ability as well over the curb there. Bit of an odd one, but he comes across the line just in front of his teammate Nicky Taylor.
Indeed so. Carl Felvis then 6th place on the grid. I don't think we're seeing any big improvements now. Ethan Hill is bailing for the pit lane. So before we have all of the reaction from what could be a crucial qualifying session, let's take a very quick break. We will be back with race 1 shortly. Welcome back, everyone. Qualifying concluded here in the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. The Silverstone Showdown off to a spectacular start for the Swedish assassin himself, Eric Axelsson, his 3rd pole position of the season by the biggest margin that he has managed all season long as well. Eric, your chances of a championship perhaps looking stronger by the moment. How satisfied are you with the way that session went?
Well, yeah, that sure felt good. Yeah, with quite a big margin, as you said. I went out and my first lap I put in was like a 56.7, and I was like, yeah, that's not too bad. And then I realized I was on mediums, so I thought, let's go out again. Yeah, and managed to do a good lap.
Well, you preempted my next question then. We were wondering why you went out on the mediums. You're the latest in a reasonably long line of drivers to make that mistake, but at least you managed to rectify it and pull that lap out of the bag. It gives you a bonus point. It means you're now only 10 points off the championship lead. And I was making the point earlier on that this is kind of what Josh Martin did last season, wasn't it, at Brands Hatch? He came in as a bit of an outsider, got the pole in race 1, won the first race, and got the fastest lap too. So how much are you trying to focus on those bonus points as well? 3 points, remember, for that fastest lap in the race.
Yeah, I need every point, right? I can't. Yeah, I just need every point. I just have to give it all. A fastest lap. I need both the fastest laps, and yeah, I need to do Bahrain all over again.
Exactly, which went pretty much as perfectly as it could for you. One thing that we were chatting about during that qualifying session is the fact that you have a little bit of an advantage maybe. You've got a teammate who is not in the championship fight, but Josh looks like he's got the pace here tonight. Is there any way, do you think, that you two can work together to try and, really help your chances of the championship, or are you just preferring to go it alone?
Well, in race 1, hopefully I don't need his help, because I'll just shoot off. That's my plan. But yeah, I don't know. I just hope it will be like a nice, clean race, and that we will have a new champion soon. I hope it's going to be me.
Well, you say new champion. We've been here before, haven't we, Eric? You are probably the most experienced, actually, of our title contenders when it comes to these championship showdowns. Do you still feel the pressure? Do you still feel those nerves starting to spike a bit at this stage?
Well, yeah, I guess I always do. Yeah, some. Especially now, just before the start. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, probably not the ideal pre-race preparation, having to come in here and answer silly questions from us lot. So we'll leave you to it, Eric, but thank you for taking the time to chat to us. Best of luck for that first race and for the rest of the night.
Thank you, Andy.
So there we go. Eric Axelson then on the pole position. The perfect start to his attempt to reclaim the #1 for next season. And Jack, he is going to be, well, he said it there, didn't he? He needs to repeat what he did at Bahrain and repeat what we know Eric is capable of doing. It's fair to say he's not necessarily been firing on all cylinders himself this season, but he's in good form when it counts.
He is in good form, and we know that one thing is pretty much always guaranteed with Eric is that he will get off the line very, very well. I would put a lot of money on him still being in first place by the time they get to the hairpins. So turn 3 and 4. Really, I'm looking forward to how he has to deal with the teammates of Joel Lask and Scott Bugner, but they haven't really acted like teammates for a long time, have they? Maybe if they're gunning for a championship, they'd rather one of them win it than zero. So, but who's going to put their ego aside or points aside? They're so closely matched. I don't think they're going to be. It's going to be really a toss-up between those two in terms of will they work together as teammates. I think you just treat them as independent.
Absolutely. And in fact, I seem to recall asking one of them, I forget whether it was Joel or Scott, a week ago, what that situation was going to be like. What's it going to be like fighting your teammate for a championship at the decider? And they said, well, it's kind of how it always has been. We don't particularly have team orders, which we noticed, and I don't really see that changing into the final round. So I expect the BMWs to be careful with each other. Sure, they're not going to look to take each other out, and certainly if you have one of those situations where Scott is ahead of Joel knows that he has to take some points out of Scott. He is 4 points adrift, of course, coming into the night, but it will be fascinating to see how they interact. And then, as I said, you've got the Lone Ranger in Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who has no help out there, but then hasn't really needed that help, and it must be said, has always been a better racer than a qualifier, so coming from 5th on the grid for Elliot is not necessarily the end of the world. So we're using the international pit straight for the starts of the races. So the first corner will be the really quick right-hander, Abbey, and it will be Eric Axelson looking to launch his green Chevrolet Corvette into the first corner as the race leader. Scott Bugner, the championship leader, starting alongside him. Joel Lask is 3rd, Josh Martin 4th, the interloper amongst those 4 championship contenders with Elliot Dalton-Ayres 5th. And remember, it is 12 points from Bugner, the points leader, to Dalton-Ayres 4th in the standings. The red lights go out. After quite a long hold, now we're away and racing here at Silverstone, and Eric Axelsen gets another good start. He will lead them down to turn 1. Here comes Josh Martin, squeezing up against the concrete wall, trying to get to the inside of the BMWs. He has to bail out of it. That will lose him momentum. Dalton Ayres to the outside. Kyle Felbus bailed for the runoff area, and Axelsen has gone. Josh Martin back up the inside again into Village, and he tries to slide his way back ahead of the Ford GT, which now has the preferred line for the left-hander at the loop. Elliot Dalton Ayres will show Josh Martin no mercy on the exit, and bang, we've got the top 4 in the points into the top 4 places already. That was a lively start, Jack, behind the race leader.
Yeah, and we've got a lively exit as well. Sage exit on the for Kenny Press, I believe that was, maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but as we see a whole cohort of Porsches heading down towards Buckland and Luffield, it's Josh Martin who's in the Corvette right in the thick of them as well. So we've got Kyle Felbus, Nicky Taylor, and Oliver Gibson, who, of course, a lot of those drivers I've just mentioned, well, all of the 3 drivers I've just mentioned, plus Nicky Taylor, I suppose, in that group, but 3 of them are involved with that top 5 championship battle. But look at Eric Axelsen, flying already. 1.5 seconds nearly, Andy, to the good, and he's only done half a lap.
Only one driver towards the pointy end on soft tyres. That was Josh Martin. That explains why he had such a good start. And I think the reason for that was because they wanted to get him ahead of the BMWs, or ahead of at least one of the BMWs into turn 1, which he very, very nearly achieved. But that little bit of door banging with Elliot Dalton Ayres at the loop has knocked him down into 6th. He had another big moment coming out of Luffield too, as at the head of the field, his teammate is trying to pull clear and succeeding in doing so at the moment. Axelsen leading the way. Bugner staying ahead of Lask. That is significant. Remember, Bugner has that 4-point lead over Joel. They are 1st and 2nd in the championship. The big question here is, what can Elliot Dalton Ayres do? He's not quite able to go with the BMWs right now, and he's got Kyle Felbus right behind him.
He has indeed, and we all know that Kyle, although he's potentially not the happiest in the Porsche, he's still as feisty as ever. If anything, it sort of amps him up, I think, having a car that he doesn't quite agree with. He makes him push on a little bit harder for himself and brings out the best in him. And I don't think he's going to leave Elliot Dalton Ayres alone at all for this race, as Elliot Dalton Ayres and Kyle Felbus mess it up through Abbey. Here comes Josh Martin around the outside through the loop. It's going to be very tight here, Andy. If he can get a drive with those soft tyres, though, he's going to have the inside, and the inside he does.
Yeah, needs to maximise those soft tyres in the early stages. Gets the hurry up there from Felbus on the apex, but that was beautiful placement of the car from the number 1. He is not our reigning champion for nothing. He positioned the car beautifully on the apex, waited for that little knock in the rear bumper to tell him that Felbus was there, and then hit the loud pedal. Carl having another look up the inside into Brooklands, though. That's very robust. It is a tightening corner, that, and you need to try and take a wide entry line, really, and that leaves you vulnerable to attack. Josh Martin fends him off for now, and surprisingly doesn't really lose any ground to Dalton Ayres, who does again seem to be a little off the outright pace. Look at the way those top 3 have escaped. Josh Martin on the soft tyres is all over him, and Elliot Dalton Ayres is going to have a busy time, at least until the softs go away on that Corvette.
Yeah, well, Kyle Felbus, gave Josh a little bit of a flash to the lights after that one, but to be honest, I don't think the gap was particularly there to start with. He wasn't close enough, and it is always going to close up on himself. So I would call inexperience almost. That's what it looked like, but we can't say that Kyle is inexperienced anymore, because he's been around in our championship for just as long as a lot of these other drivers. So, yeah, just one sort of opportunity there that was never really going to come off for Kyle Felbus. He's going to have to think a little bit harder about it than that, especially with the late-braking nature of the soft tyres that Josh Martin has got on his car. As he said, they are going to fall away at some point, and that's when Elliot Dalton Ayres might get a little bit of a breather, and Kyle might get a bit of an easier pass.
Yeah, ideal situation here for Dalton Ayres is to keep Martin behind. Never mind, Josh Martin with the lunge of the day up the inside. That was a beautiful move from Josh Martin, but Dalton Ayres comes straight back at him up the inside through club. The second apex tightens up though, and there is contact. Josh Martin is sideways and off into the pit wall, and that was completely unavoidable, I'm afraid. Elliot Dalton Ayres trying his best to get back up the inside line, and there was contact that put the reigning champion into the wall. Now, he reset to the pit lane there. I don't think he meant to. I suspect that he knocked a button on his wheel as he was all arms and elbows trying to save the slide, but it doesn't matter how you do it. You're not allowed to reset to the pit lane. So Josh is likely to get a slap on the wrist for that, but I don't think he'll be the only one, Jack.
No, it was, as I said, it was all very close racing. Maybe just the occasion got to a few drivers as Josh was pulling over to the left-hand side. I think he's going to get disqualified for that. As you said, it doesn't matter whether it's an accident or not in racing. The fact is, these things happen, and we have rules here at VRRC, and they've got to be followed. So Josh Martin looks like he's taking his medicine, although he was forced to take it. Some would say it is going to be a disqualification for Josh, and that's going to really hurt him in the fight for 5th place, especially as he is fighting with Kyle Felvis and Oliver Gibson, who is still obviously running in the race, and Kyle Felvis is the one who was really doing battle with him for the majority of that race.
Yes, and the other thing that happened was Dalton Ayres fell behind Kyle Felvis, as you said. So Kyle Felvis still does get ahead of Dalton Ayres. Dalton Ayres ends up losing 1 place anyway, and likely will find himself in some trouble. But hey, there's a championship on the line. Sometimes it's better just to do what you have to. On the track, and then argue the toss later. He is doing his best to try and stick with Kyle Felvis, who's weaving down the hanger straight to try and break the toe. The Porsche does perform pretty well down the straights, and he's not bad under braking either, so Felvis will hang on to that for the time being, with Dalton Ayres 5th, Taylor 6th, and Oliver Gibson 7th. So a real Porsche affair here, with the Ford GT in the middle of it, and now Dalton Ayres tries to do to Felvis what Martin did to him a lap ago down into the Vale, but he doesn't quite make the move stick, and Felvis will, well, now be careful here, Elliot. This is exactly what he tried to do to Martin a lap ago. He's up the inside through the second part of club. Felvis gives him a wide berth, runs right off the track, and Dalton Ayres is still up the inside line into Abbey Corner. Tough to go side by side through here. There is more contact, and Felvis is visiting that bit of tarmac runoff area for the second time.
Yeah, he's getting a little bit too familiar with it as he comes back on the circuit ahead of them all, as Elliot Dalton Ayres again squeezing. Is there going to be more contact? No, he pulls out of that one, luckily, but Kyle not giving the place up, and to be fair, for that one, I don't think he really needed to either. He was somewhat forced off the circuit, and he rejoined safely, and they continued their very close battle. It looks like Nicky Taylor's going to run on Elliot Dalton Ayres rather than Dalton Ayres on Felvis. Taylor up the inside and takes away that top 5 position ahead of Dalton Ayres.
Indeed he does, so it's all starting to unravel now, isn't it, for the Ford driver, unfortunately. 2 of the Porsches getting through. He's got another one on his tail, and they've been joined, look, by Reece Bell. Would be nice for the Aston Martins to get some good results here at their home race, if you like, and for Reece Bell, probably the most improved driver on the grid this season, to try and end his season with another really strong result. Remember that he had that podium finish, didn't he, back at Watkins Glen, the highlight of his season in the reverse grid race, and he could be positioning himself to do that again, but he is genuinely keeping up here with some of the regular front runners in the championship, so really good drive this again by Reece, and Kyle Felvis breaking through to the front of that group with his teammate right behind.
Yeah, indeed. It's very, very close. Well, the front 3 somewhat disappeared, haven't they? Just to bring it back to our Championship 3, you could argue that they're sort of named as now, I suppose. There's Eric Axelson, Scott Bugner, and Joel Lask. They have pretty much disappeared, and there's a good half a second at least between them. So it's a bit processional at the front. It's anything but for the top for 4th position.
That is the case. Down towards the end of another lap they go. Felvis just starting to break away slightly from Nicky Taylor for the time being, and they make their way down towards Abbey Corner once again. As far as fastest lap is concerned, by the way, it does look as though Eric Axelson is going to get that. He's at a 156.245, faster than faster than anyone else has managed so far, I believe, in this race. Just fractionally, that is, by about a 1/10.5 quicker than Scott Bugner, but a 1/10.5 will do it, and that's worth 3 championship points. Meanwhile, whilst I was looking at the timing screen, Elliot Dalton Ayres back up the inside of Nicky Taylor, and it looked like he did that through Village, Jack.
He did indeed. I was looking at my times as well, actually, funnily enough. But it looks like Nicky Taylor trying to get the run down into Buckland. He's getting really late on the brakes. Ellie Dalton Ayres was squeezing him. But Nicky Taylor's not one to be scared away from a challenge, is he? Andy, we've seen him all these years just trying to get his elbows out and making sure that no one bullies him out of the way. And Nicky Taylor holds on to that 5th position. But they are swapping places rather handily for Kyle Felvis.
Exactly, letting Felvis off the hook, isn't it, right now? And that's exactly what he wants to see. Kyle Felvis arriving here 6th in the championship, but as we made the point, only 5 points behind Josh Martin as Elliot Dalton Ayres invents his own line through Copse Corner. And that is a driver who is past the point of caring, isn't it now? You can feel his slim championship hopes starting to slip away ever further, and he is really driving the wheels off the Ford GT, but sadly 6th place, the best that he can manage again, and he's off the road once more. Is over the grass heading out of Chapel, and that now might leave him vulnerable to attack from Oliver Gibson.
Yeah, it's you're right. I think he is seeing a championship slip away from him inch by inch, and he just doesn't have the pace around Silverstone, does he? I think we did have a chat to him last week about whether he was looking forward to this track, and I don't think he was particularly sort of overjoyed with it. It's a track that he hasn't done very much because we at VRRC haven't done the GP loop at all very often. So not sure how much practice he got in. He was 4th in practice, but it doesn't look like he's able to convert that in race pace.
No, not for the time being. Back past the wing they go. We are seeing some of this brilliant Silverstone racing that we promised you. The head of the field, by the way, the lead. Oh, Dr. Nair's off again. He's got no grip, has he? I think he's maybe chewed up even the medium tyres in the early stages. And now Oliver Gibson pounces, gets up the inside of him through Village, but that becomes the outside for the loop. This, though, is the part of the circuit that really should suit the rear-engine Porsche the best, as it tries to get that traction down off the loop and through Aintree out onto the back straight. And Elliot Dalton-Ayres, I think, just needs to take a breath here, recalibrate a little bit, and try not to make any further mistakes. Is Gibson going to have a go up the inside? The answer is no, as they turn through Brooklands. Point I was about to make is that the lead gap is coming down fractionally. Look, it's hovering now around 1.1 seconds, whereas it was 1.3, 1.4 a couple of laps ago. We're only just past halfway, Jack. Has Scott Bugner got an answer for Eric Axelsen?
We'll have to wait and see. We do normally comment on Eric Axelsen being really nice and good on his tyres, don't we? Keeping those temperatures down, keeping the life in them for as long as possible. But maybe Scott Bugner's found an answer, and he has become one somewhat with that BMW, hasn't he? It's like a hand to a glove almost now with those two, Joel and Scott. They're absolutely loving the BMW M6, and I think maybe we're talking about a driver who's got an opportunity at sort of, as he said, having that answer to Eric Axelsen in terms of tyre longevity, something we never thought we'd say.
Indeed not. Down towards Stowe go the Porsches, just starting to get themselves a bit closer together, aren't they? But Nicky Taylor not choosing to go up the inside on this occasion. As it stands, by the way, Scott Bugner would retain the championship lead, and it would still be by 4 points, but over Eric Axelsen, who would move into second ahead of Joel Lask. The three of them at the moment covered by 6 points, it would be, going into the final race of the season. But look at those lap times. Bugner 2/10 quicker than Axelsen. Lask 3/10 quicker than Eric Axelsen. So the gaps at the front are definitely starting now to creep down. They're not lapping as quickly as they were earlier in the race, so the fastest lap points should be safe for Eric. But is that race victory a done deal just yet? I'm not so sure. Down through Village come the two Porsches, visually gapping now Elliot Dalton-Ayres, but the gaps at the front continuing. In fact, look at how close now the two LB BMWs are, just 2/10 in it.
Yeah, it's incredible, actually, isn't it? I was just looking at the points referencing, and if Eric loses a second place, that sort of fastest lap will mean that it sort of negates it. Oh, big slide there for Joel Lask, because you get 25 points for winning a race, you get 22 for coming second, but you get 3 points for a fastest lap. So Eric Axelsen is still doing a good job, and as you say, it looks like it's safe for him. Joel Lask on that massive slide, that's going to be cooking the tyres up somewhat, and there's a lot of medium to high speed corners around Silverstone. Maybe that's what we're seeing with Elliot Dalton-Ayres. With cooking those tyres, you never really get a chance to cool them down.
No, and tyre temperature has always been something that on Assetto Corsa is perhaps more has more of an effect almost than tyre wear. It's if you overheat those tyres that you really start to lose grip. However, Joel Lask having a go here at Scott Bugner is now starting to benefit Eric Axelsen, who also did a purple first sector, so he's done some of this on his own accord as well. If those two start fighting, though, they will hand the victory to Axelsen, and this now brings you back to your point that you made earlier, Jack. This is such a difficult situation for Bugner and Lask to be in. And I heard, I was listening to a podcast a few days ago. It was a Formula 1 related podcast. I'm not going to go on a complete tangent here, don't worry. But basically, the person in question was saying that Mercedes made a big mistake signing George Russell, because a team should have one number one driver and a number 2 driver who supports them. That is not the situation at LB Motorsport. Both of those drivers want the championship, and in squabbling for second place in this race, they're handing valuable points to their big rival.
Well, I think that's the age-old argument of Formula 1, isn't it, really? The fact that, do you have 2 strong drivers and win the Team Constructors' Championship, or do you look for the Drivers' Championship? And unfortunately for what most people forget at home is the fact that you earn money through the Team Constructors' Championship, don't you? That's where the prize money really is, and that's so Mercedes having the 2 strongest drivers, they would like one of them to win the championship. As long as they win the Constructors, they're probably more than happy. But here at VRRC, we do keep a tally of the team point, to be fair, but it's not all about that. The championship we focus on and all the prizes are for, and basically everything revolves around, is the personal championship. And obviously, with the likes of Joel and Scott, they do work together in practice. I don't think they hide setups or anything from each other. They do go out there and practice together as well. So it's not like there's a bitter rivalry. It's not like Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo or anything like that, but it is going to be one that as soon as the race goes, the gloves are off.
Insert there any of Max Verstappen's teammates, actually, I'd say. But
Well,
yes,
sure.
I'd take your point. Yeah, it's a tricky situation, isn't it? The other big difference, of course, between VRRC and Formula One is that, to my knowledge at least, Rich Hayden is not giving away tens of millions of pounds to the winning team. So I think very much the Drivers' Championship will take precedence. They have sort of laid off each other for a little while, though, and as a result, that lead gap has started to come down again. So the situation not over at the front of the field just yet, nor is this relentless battle that's still going on for fourth place. Elliot Dalton-Ayres is coming back now at the Porsches. He has cleared Nicky Taylor and is now trying to reclaim fourth position, trying to salvage any points that he can, and he sends it round the outside through Snow Corner. Can he make that one stick? That would be a sensational move if he can. He keeps it within track limits as well, and he's got the inside line into the braking zone at Club, but now Felvers is the one late on the brakes, goes back down the outside into the right hand, and there is contact. Dalton-Ayres around, Nicky Taylor around, and that was all a result of the stack up ahead of them, and Dalton-Ayres spins wildly back onto the track. His tyres, if they weren't overheating previously, certainly will be now, and that was just a really unfortunate concertina after a brilliant bit of racing.
Yeah, I don't want to be passing any blame on there because I want to see it again more than anything, whether Nicky Taylor wanted to go for that cutback, but then obviously Elliot Dalton-Ayres did as well. They could have read that maybe a little bit better. Maybe they sort of didn't expect each other to move to the same bit of circuit. All a bit of a shame, but what we can say, Andy, it was a brilliant move by Elliot Dalton-Ayres around the outside at Stowe. It was good racing by Kyle Felvers to come back at him as well with that really late break into the club chicane. It's just a bit of a shame that it ended up that way, but it has handed Oliver Gibson a potential 5th position, Reece Bell a potential 6th as well, and that's going to be interesting between Oliver Gibson and Kyle Felvers for that run into 5th place with Josh Martin not in this race anymore.
Yes, yeah, I forgot about that. Actually, Josh Martin out of the race as well. But that has really, it's split the pack, but it's shuffled the order quite nicely, hasn't it? Felvers 4th, Gibson on a real roll at the moment. At that race win at Suzuka a week ago has done wonders for his confidence. It's not going to be a race win in this race, but another top 5 finish could be on the way. He's had 4 of them so far this season, including that race win. But to get another one here today, he needs to get the better of Reece Bell, who is also going to be hungry for another really good result. So out onto the hangar straight they go. They'll be coming through to start what should be the penultimate lap next time around, and still question marks over who will finish 4th.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the sort of race-long battle, hasn't it? The fight for first was somewhat over by the time they got into the first corner. Scott Bugner and Joel Lask semi-ignited a little bit of a battle, but it only lasted about half a lap. The battle for 4th has been where all the drama has been going, and all the points are being scored at the moment, pretty much, in terms of the sort of what's up for grabs, you could argue. And Kyle Felvers has held on to that 4th place for the majority of it. He hasn't had it all his own way, of course, Andy, has he, with Elliot Dalton-Ayres and to an extent Nicky Taylor's sort of asking some questions. But he has driven quite well, has Kyle, and you could argue that parking it on the apex of the club chicane like he did is sort of is smart driving, really. I mean, he's in the lead. Everybody else has to sort of drive around him.
It's exactly what Dalton-Ayres did to Kyle, I think, earlier on at this part of the track, wasn't it? Got up the inside into the loop and then just parked it on the apex. He waited till he felt that little knock, and that told him that he'd covered the line, the momentum had been lost by the car behind, and then off he went. The trouble is that on that occasion, there were 3 of them, and the third car in the train very often doesn't really have much of an idea of what's going on up the road. But anyway, thankfully, it's not our decision. We just sit here and talk about it. What we've got to talk about at the moment is, well, not very much at the front of the field, actually, because Axelsen is once again stretching that margin over Bugner. Lask is dropping back again from his teammate too. They are 15 seconds up the road from this 4th place battle, though, Jack. I know they've had their fair bit of fighting, but that is as close to dominance as we've seen from one group of drivers all season long. Yeah,
slightly surprising, but you know what isn't surprising? The pole sitter potentially converting to a race victory, Andy. How many times have we said it? And, well, as soon as we saw Eric Axelsen at the top of the times in qualifying, you could probably put a bet on the fact that it would happen once again. Really strong evening from him so far. He's doing everything he needs to put himself right into prime position to take that championship once again. And as we said in the build-up in qualifying and stuff, Andy, it's a bit of a surprise to even see him up that far, but he always seems to be there or thereabouts.
He does. I mean, he is such a talent, is Eric Axelsen, and it is his sort of cool, calm, collected nature under pressure that really impresses me the most. And he's going to need that tonight, isn't he? Because this is only part of the job. He came in 11 points adrift of the championship lead. This race is going to more than halve that gap, but he still will be 4 points behind Bugner going to the final race a little bit later on tonight if things finish as they are now. Meanwhile, Andy Carroll here is trying to find a way past Sam Zero. Sam Zero is in the top 10. That is something we've only said on a couple of occasions so far this season. He's had a best finish of 8th in a reversed grid at Istanbul. He had a 9th in a reversed grid at Monza, but for race 1, this would be by far his best finish of the season so far. But he has got the Watkins Glen race winner, Andy Carroll, right behind him. This could be a really tasty battle here over the final lap.
Yeah, and he's calling all of the back. They're going slightly different lines. Andy Carroll trying to force Sam Zero into a mistake, and I fear that for Sam Zero, he went a little bit narrow into that second hairpin, didn't he? And that's maybe going to ruin his run down towards Brooklands and Luffield. Oh, Andy Carroll using all the track and more. Sam Zero almost looking like he was just going to pull over to the side, but trying to break that. So they're trying all the tricks without being as close to each other as some of the front runners, really, Andy. They are learning a lot here.
And they learn a lot from racing the frontrunners, and that is why these reverse grid races that are coming up later on, they're a great spectacle for us because they produce lots of good side-by-side racing, but they're a great opportunity for the Sam Zeros and Andy Carrolls of the world to race with the Eric Axelsons, Scott Bugners and Joel Lasks of the world. They will pick things up in those reverse grid races that will serve them well in the future, and that's why we've seen Andy Carroll now grab a race victory this season as well. This time around, though, it's going to be all about Eric Axelson as far as the race victory is concerned. It's going to be his 4th race win of the season. It is the 3rd time that he has converted race 1 pole into a victory, and it moves him to within a handful of points of the championship lead going into the final round in a little while. 2nd place goes to Scott Bugner, 3rd to Joel Lask. Pretty static race for those 3 at the front, but it sets us up nicely for race 2. Kyle Felvers, meanwhile, comes out of a bruising battle for 4th on top, with Oliver Gibson happy again with a solid top 5 finish. He has been one of the most improved drivers over the second half of the season. So too Reece Bell. 6th place there for Reece Bell. Is that his best race 1 finish of the season? Yes, it is. He's had 3 8th place finishes, and that his first top 6 in race 1. Nicky Taylor 7th, Elliot Dalton-Ayres 8th, question mark, Ethan Hill 9th, and Andy Carroll getting the better of Sam Zero in the end for 10th place. Lots to talk about after that first race of the night here at Silverstone. Lots of maths to be done to double check on the points. So whilst we break the calculators out, we'll have a very quick break. Don't go anywhere. Yes. Welcome back, everyone, to Silverstone, where a very intense first race of the night has just been completed in the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. Not a lot of movement in positions inside the top 3, but the same cannot be said for the championship table coming in to the final race in a moment or two. We've got our top 3 finishers with us now. Let's start with our race winner, Eric Axelson. Well, Eric, job done so far. Pole position, race win, bonus points for the fastest lap as well, and we think you're now within 4 of the championship lead. How are you feeling?
Jesus, yeah, it's going according to plan. Well, reverse grade is always a joker. We'll see.
Yeah, obviously that first part of the night is almost the easier part. Not that it's easier to win these easy to win these races even from the front, but at least you didn't have too much traffic to contend with. Was that though as perfect a race as it looked?
Yeah, I mean the start was great, but yeah, I think we had the same pace. Me, Scott and Joel, almost the whole race. So I mean, like one mistake and it would have been gone. So yeah, I'm very happy.
And of course, you're all starting together now at the back of the grid as well. So these first few laps could be crucial. How aggressive are you willing to get now?
Well, I know who I need to be ahead of. That's yeah, that's how I'm gonna think.
Absolutely. Well, Eric, we'll let you go and prepare for what's going to be a crucial final race. Best of luck and well done on the race victory.
Thank you, Andy.
Eric Axelsson then does what he needs to do to give his championship hopes the best boost possible. But it's not over yet, is it, Jack? And our second place finisher will still have something to say about it.
Yeah, Scott Bugner, congratulations on the second. A bit of a difficult night for you, this one. Always trying to do concentrate basically on doing mental maths as well as driving around Silverstone as fast as possible.
I'm not even looking at the maps. I'm just now I am for this race, but that race was just get points, make sure that I'm behind Eric or in front of Eric, and see how it goes in this one.
Well, that's fair enough. That's my tactic as well. I let Andy do all the maths and I just sit here and enjoy the evening. But it's a great opportunity for you and your teammate Joel Lask as well. But like we saw in pretty much the last three championships, the gloves seem to be off between you two.
Yeah, they're off. It's we've helped each other all season. We've worked together, but we always said if we come into the last one with a fighting chance, then we'll, like you said, take our gloves off and fight to the end.
Well, that's what we like to hear as motorsport fans. Congratulations, Scott, on the second place. We look forward to potentially having a chat to you later on.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Best of luck for that second race coming up shortly. And, well, let's hear from the other side of the LB Motorsport Garage, shall we then? Joel Lask, third place finish. Are you a little disappointed maybe you couldn't quite have a proper go at your teammate there? You closed in a bit through the middle of the race, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a bit of a tough one, to be fair. I don't even know. I could get up behind him, but I just couldn't quite get within range to overtake unless I lunged it. But then there's a chance of us both coming off, so I just didn't want to take that risk. But hey, we've got another race to go yet. It's all to play for. You never know what'll happen, so we'll go from there.
And you're still absolutely in contention. So what is the game plan now for this third race? Is it all out attack, elbows out, get to the front at all costs? Or is there still a period at the start of the race, at least, where you kind of work with your teammate to make some progress?
Game on. That's all I'm going to say. We'll just go for it to the front as quick as possible. Keep out of trouble and see where we go from there.
Sounds like a good game plan to me. Joel, the very best of luck for that second race. Put on a show for us, I'm sure you will. And we'll be chatting to you later, no doubt.
Appreciate it.
There we go then. Top three in that race. And realistically now, Jack, it does boil down to those three. The championship standings as I have it and as Lewis Edwards has it. So if this is wrong, then you can blame the two of us, not just me. It is 264 points for Scott Bugner, 260 for Eric Axelsson, 258 for Joel Lask. 6 points covering the top three. Oh, and by the way, they will be starting at the very back of the grid, or near the very back of the grid. Anyway, points leader Bugner will be 13th, Axelsson second in the points will be 14th, and Lask, a slight track position advantage perhaps, will be starting 12th. At the front of the grid, Stuart Vickers and Kenny Press, they're going to be just looking for a good result to end their season. They won't really care about the championship, which comes now to a sizzling climax around the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. 20 minutes to crown our latest VRRC champion, and off the line they go with a good start made by Vickers from the front row of the grid. Up the middle is coming Paul Laramie, and they're going to go 3-1 into turn one. There's contact off to the inside. There goes Kenny Press, and around goes Sam Zero with one of the Porsches. I think that was Ethan Hill going off the road too. Thankfully, the title contenders seem to have got through it. Into Village they go. 4 wide. Inevitable contact on the apex. Who gets through it? There is absolute carnage. Around goes Kenny Press. Around goes Paul Laramie. The BMWs were in that, but got through it, I think, with Bugner 6th. Lask up to 7th place, and Axelsson Jack is still 10th.
I'll tell you what, my heart skipped about 5 beats in the course of about 10 seconds, let alone the drivers who are in a championship contention. When you go into one of these races, we owned a safety car, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, don't worry. They're not just going super slowly or we're not just lagging. When you go into a championship sort of finale, your heart is on the edge and you're almost terrified that it could all be finished by the first corner. But there was loads of contact, but not to do with anything of the sort of the main three or any of the championship contenders. So that is going to be really, really sort of heart racing moment for a lot of them. But now they can calm down just a touch. It's going to be a long safety car, isn't it, Andy? Because although it'll finish at the end of this lap, it's a damn long lap.
It is indeed, for sure, and yeah, that will just give them a moment to recalibrate their brain at the moment. This is a perfect situation, though, for Scott Bugner, because he has come out of that, hopefully with no damage, in 6th position. He's got his teammate right behind him, but remember, those two teammates are separated by 6 points. He could let Lask go if he wanted to. His main thing is to make sure that he beats Eric Axelsen, who did not come out of that terribly well. I think I said Axelsen started about 12th. He's up to 10th. Didn't make a huge amount of progress there and has work to be done. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, by the way, mathematically could still win the championship, I think, perhaps, but with the potential penalties hanging over him, I'm not really counting him as the same as the top 3. He is in 3rd place, though, and will at the very least want to end the season with a good result. How much of a stumbling block could that prove to be as and when the top 3 in the championship get to him? Because you've got some very fiery races near the front. Dalton-Ayres, Felvers, Taylor. They're not known for pulling out of people's way, are they?
Absolutely not, and I think more than anything, they'll be taking points off the 3 that we keep talking about. More than anything, it's as I said, there's the difference between 1st and 2nd is 3 points. It's 25 down to 22, and then I think the gap only gets smaller from there. Yeah, 22 down to 20. 20 to 18 and so on until you get outside the top 5 when the difference is only 1 point between the places. So yeah, those 3 could take the podium spots, and all of a sudden the mathematics get a little bit harder for the likes of Bugner, Lask and Eric Axelsen. But there's a long way to go yet, Andy. 17 minutes and we're about to get back under racing with Stuart Vickers controlling the pace.
I thought Vickers, sorry Jack, I thought Vickers had lost it. I actually think he did lose it slightly there.
He did,
yeah. Club and sort of dressed it up as a bit of tyre weaving. But anyway, we are now getting going. That has really bunched the pack up though, because Andy Carroll had to lift off to make sure he didn't pass him. And so they're all on top of each other already as they head to turn 1. And that was Josh Martin, I think, wasn't it, going up the inside line further back. Out wide goes Vickers. That's Vickers, the race leader. He's off and pointing the wrong way. Dalton-Ayres up the inside of Andy Carroll. There goes Bugner up the inside of Nicky Taylor. It's all happening almost too quickly to keep track of. Taylor launches back up the inside of the BMW, and there is Josh Martin as well. Goes Dalton-Ayres in front of with Andy Carroll. Felmus comes out with the lead. There's contact between the BMWs though, and off goes Bugner.
Bugner having to rejoin the circuit. Does he manage to do it safely? Yes, he does. Behind the BMW of his teammates and behind the Corvettes as well. That's Scott Bugner in the pit.
Oh, what? Scott Bugner is in the pit lane. What has happened?
Oh, Joel Lask!
That is Joel Lask off the road as well. This has absolutely detonated for the BMWs. What is going on? Bugner is back. Bugner is back. It must have been an internet glitch. Don't do that to us, Scott. He is glitching off all the way, though. He clearly has connection issues, and I think ultimately that might take him out of the race.
That's absolutely gutty. I bet you didn't have this problem at Silverstone on the weekend, did you, Andy? We have no idea where Scott Bugner's disappeared to. He might end up DQing. Is that giving the championship to Eric Axelsen? Joel Lask is all the way down in 9th place. Eric is up into the top 5, just behind Ethan Hill.
Yes, okay. Well, that is Reese Bell off the road, a long way off the road through Maggots and Beckett's as well. That's a bit of the Silverstone scenery you don't see a lot of. Bugner now appears to be out of the race. Those connection issues have now proven to be terminal for him, so he is out. That means that as it stands, with Axelsen in 5th and Lask actually just moving up into 8th position, Axelsen will be champion by 5 points. It is not over for Joel Lask, but he has to gain a few positions here, and you have to imagine that Eric is likely to do the same. He's got a teammate ahead of him. If nothing else, that's surely one free position, courtesy of Josh Martin. So the pressure is on Joel Lask now. The hopes of his team resting now on his shoulders.
Well, I'll tell you what, if it was on the first lap, there potentially would have been a restart if we had a lot of people lagging. We've had it earlier in the season, but we're far too far into this race now. That is a heartbreaking and pretty unfair way to for Scott Bugner to lose this championship, in my opinion. He's I'm not saying unfair as if we could do anything about it. It's just sometimes, you know, life is unfair, really. It is absolutely gutting, but it does mean that we only have 2 to focus on, and I believe there's only 2 points between them going into this race. Andy, you could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Eric was on 260 and Joel was on 258.
Which means that Lask needs to beat Axelson unless he can get the fastest lap, but I'm sure he will have damage after that pretty significant bit of contact through Brooklands a few laps ago, and his lap times at the moment would suggest that he's not able to catch this group ahead, even though they're running quite close together. Carl Fellows, by the way, leads the race from Nicky Taylor second. Josh Martin in third could salvage something from what's been a pretty awful second half of his season. Ethan Hill likewise in fourth, and then the champion-elect Eric Axelson out of Cop's corner he goes, and Oliver Gibson right behind him in sixth as well. The gap back to Lask 2.7 seconds, and for the moment, Jack, it ain't coming down.
No, it's not. I'll tell you what, I'm breathless, Andy. I don't know about you, but that was the 7 minutes we've had of racing so far. We've had safety cars, we've had championship favourites to be going out, we've had DCs. It's been incredible, really, hasn't it? And as we sort of half pointed out before, we've sort of missed the fact that we've got 2 Porsches leading the race, 3 Porsches in the top 4, 4 Porsches in the top 6. Did you hear a rumour that the Porsche wasn't competitive this season?
I did. I'm gonna stop listening to these vicious rumours though, because that looks like a pretty competitive car to me. Okay, they've benefited a bit maybe by being in the right place at the right time, but the numbers don't lie, do they? That car I always thought would go well here. In real life, the Porsche has always performed well at Silverstone because of the tight and technical sections. It really gets off those corners well, but is well balanced through the medium speed corners too. And right now, Ethan Hill's Porsche is being given a bit of a workover by Eric Axelson, but Eric is a smart driver, Jack. He will know what's going on. He will know that he's currently in a championship winning position, and he can see on his Delta, I'm sure, that Joel Lask is dropping back rather than catching. So Eric doesn't need to pass Ethan Hill. Finishing right where he is now would be more than enough for the championship. I don't expect him to take too many risks until it becomes necessary.
No, I don't really expect Ethan to be that much of a hardy defender, though, either, I would say, on Eric Axelson. If the position's going to be lost, I don't think Ethan is going to really spit his dummy out about it, put it that way. Although he is just cutting the nose off Eric there. I mean, there's an argument to say he's going for that late apex and straightening the car to try and get a good exit, which he has done. But it did seem a little bit too close for comfort. As Nicky Taylor and Josh Martin, the other Porsche and Corvette battle that we've got going on. Josh around the outside, and that's quite incredible through Cops.
It is. He's also on the soft tyres again, by the way. I don't know if we've mentioned that in this race so far, but it works well for him through Cobbs. Are they still side by side? They are, though, and Nicky Taylor gets through the Maggots Beckett switchback. Josh Martin with dirt on the tyres gets a little bit sideways. And will now have to make sure that he gets them cooled off before he has another go at Nicky. Nicky right now defending for himself for second, sure, but also kind of defending for Kyle Felvers, who is now the best part of 2 seconds up the road, and Kyle Felvers looking for only his second victory of the season. It's not been a particularly strong season for Kyle. As we've documented a few times, it would be lovely for him to round things off with a race victory. Nicky Taylor, of course, has only had 1 podium all season. That was a second place at Fuji a couple of weeks ago. So both of those drivers at the front of the field are extra incentivized here to try and hang on to their current places.
Yeah, a little bit of pride and everything really involved, isn't it, with this championship for those guys? They have had to sort of they've had some bad luck. They haven't quite agreed with the car, as we sort of touched on a couple of times before, and how they touched on very heavily when they came into the interview rooms. But there is plenty of opportunity to test those cars before we go into the season. So as I said before, I think maybe they're going to test a little bit harder leading up to the next championship, which is, of course, I think we're going back to touring cars, aren't we? Which a lot of drivers are very excited about. Touring cars always brings in the crowds and the masses, and of course the drivers. So we're looking forward to that. We'll be talking about that after this race, of course, before we seal off for the evening. So if you want more information on that, then please do stick around. Josh Martin has got past Nicky Taylor. He's missing apexes to do it, but he just about gets the car straightened up and has that second place.
He does indeed. Just taking a look at the lap times, by the way, Josh Martin at the moment has the fastest lap, so just to keep track of those 3 points and where they'll be going, they will not be going to any of our championship contenders, it would seem. Josh Martin taking the 3 points, in a way taking them away from his teammate, but his teammate right now doesn't particularly need them because the gap between Oliver Gibson 6th and Joel Lask 7th, remember it's Lask who needs to make some progress here, is going up. That car clearly badly damaged. We cut to it. It was in the middle of about a 3 or 4 car shunt at Brooklands, and that probably wasn't the first bit of contact he'd had, in all honesty, given the way the first lap went. And it does now seem that the BMW is off the pace just a touch. Down the hanger straight they go then, towards the braking zone at Stowe. Eric Axelsson being caught a bit here by Oliver Gibson. Is that now going to spur the Swede into having a bit more of a go at Ethan Hill? Whilst he could afford to let Gibson go, I'm sure he'd rather not give away too many places. He might be forced into having a go at the Porsche head, and this is where things start to get a bit risky.
Yeah, no, you're starting to sort of question what your game plan is here, because I'm sure Eric Axelsson was probably pretty happy with how things were going up until this point. Now all of a sudden, with a motivated Porsche behind him and Oliver Gibson, he's starting to think, oh, should I have gone for that move earlier on? Should I be thinking a little bit more aggressively now? Do I look to defend even, or do I just let the place go? All of a sudden, all these things, you start second guessing yourself. If this was Bahrain race 2, like we saw with Eric Axelsson absolutely flying at round 1, you wouldn't second guess yourself whatsoever. You just make the decision and you'd stick to it and you'd go forward. But here, with the championship on the line, all of a sudden, these sort of conversations in your own head start to have a bit more weight about them.
And since you started that point, Jack, Joel Laska's taken nearly 0.6 of a second out of this group, so they're starting to slow down, and this is where the intensity starts to build up. This championship is not over by any stretch, because as long as Axelsson is trapped between Ethan Hill and Oliver Gibson, he's stuck running their pace. Joel Lask suddenly has started to catch, and remember, Lask only has to beat Eric by 2 places based on where they're running at the moment. So Joel Lask, if he can get to Axelsson, suddenly has half a chance. And look, you can see Eric is now starting to have a bit of a go at Ethan Hill. Ethan defends slightly into Kopp's corner. That slows them all down at the apex. Lask takes another 10th or so out of them, and still Ethan Hill not jumping out of the way. Now, all of the non-championship contending drivers were warned before tonight, don't get too involved in the championship. That doesn't mean... Oh, off goes Ethan Hill! Back onto the road, just avoids Eric Axelsson. What a moment that could have been in the championship. And suddenly, Axelsson is free, but that could so easily have ended differently.
I was expecting there to be a rejoin out of control and straight into the side of that Corvette, and all of a sudden with Joel Lask flying through, but heart in mouth moment there for Axelsson. He manages to survive it. Ethan Hill getting it all crossed up. We're going through Maggots and Beckett's. Luckily, he's rejoined with not hitting anybody, and actually he's only lost 1 or 2 positions. But wow, oh wow, has that just made the decision for Eric Axelsson? How much easier is his life now? I was about to start bringing up the point, Andy, about the fact that if Joel Lask gets to 4th place and Eric Axelsson stays in 5th, then actually they'll be tied on points, and all of a sudden you have to start looking at other things. I don't know what it would be, whether it be race wins, and probably would be. So that means Eric Axelsson would win, and all this, that, and the other. But that makes it a lot more simple. Eric Axelsson's got that 2-place buffer now.
And a 6-point buffer that now equates to for Eric Axelsson. You're right, Eric would win on countback because he's had more race wins so far than Joel Lask. That 4th victory that he took earlier on today, comparing to Joel's 2 wins that could only ever get as high as 3, even if Joel did win this race, and that is not looking all that likely, it must be said. Still some good racing to be had further back, by the way. Kenny Press has been backwards in this race at least once, to my knowledge, and is still inside the top 10. If that doesn't tell you how chaotic the race has been, then nothing will. But Reece Bell getting the better of him there, moving up to 8th place. They're 22.5 seconds off the race lead, though. This is definitely a group of drivers who have had suboptimal races, I think the pros would call it. And Reece Bell gaining 1 place, Andy Carroll coming through with him too, as Eric Axelsson now has reeled in Nicky Taylor very quickly. Very, very quickly, actually. I wonder if Nicky's had a moment somewhere, but suddenly the pressure's back onto Eric. It's really the only situation in motorsport, isn't it, Jack, where you don't want to catch people. Eric doesn't want to race anyone for 3rd place. He'd quite happily settle for a nice, easy, trouble-free 4th, but he's too quick. He keeps catching people, and that's putting him now in these perilous situations.
I can't stress enough how annoying it is, the fact that to have to drive at 90% when you practice so hard at driving 100% or 95% throughout all of it, to then have, like Eric Axelsson, he'll be having to drive at about 80% right now. If he doesn't want to go past or risk it for Nicky Taylor, he has to sort of dial it back somewhat. And it's so much harder than you think to dial it back. You're so used to braking at certain points, carrying a certain amount of speed, all this, that, and the other. The fact that you have to brake a little bit earlier, you have to take off a little bit more speed. Maybe your accelerating point is slightly different. Maybe the line for the driver in front is different as well. It is so much harder to learn that on the go, in the middle of a race, than you think, especially when there's a weight of a championship on your shoulders. Eric hasn't fallen victim to it yet, but as I said, it's harder than it looks what he has to do right now.
Indeed so. Back out onto the Wellington Straight they go, and Eric Axelson, I made the point in the chat with him earlier on, he's probably the most experienced of these Championship 4 that we had coming into the final run, not necessarily just in terms of race starts, but the amount of times that he has been a Championship contender, the amount of times that he's been a champion, you know, he's been there, done it all. Often actually has won championships in slightly less stressful situations than this, because normally he dominates over the course of a whole season. In the background, by the way, Joel Lask was up the inside of Ethan Hill. That is for 6th position. He is continuing to move forward. And then slows down. What's going on here? Joel Lask backing off through Woodcote, and Ethan Hill flashing his lights going back through. You don't suppose those two made a bit of contact at Luffield, do you, Jack?
I couldn't tell you, to be honest. I was looking at that broadcaster chat, to be honest, so I have no idea. But yeah, that was a bit of a strange one. But Joel Lask will have to do it again somewhat, and all of a sudden he wants to keep it clean as much as possible. But he has to be really motivated to get past Ethan Hill. So you never know. There could have been that contact.
Yeah, the reason I say that is because from what we saw in the background, Joel was sort of nibbling at the rear bumper of the Porsche. Then he was ahead of the Porsche, and then he slowed down and let the Porsche, which was flashing its lights at him, back through. So putting all of the clues together, that was the answer I came to. And Joel has still not got back ahead of Ethan, but yeah. At the moment, down through Vale, Nicky Taylor now becomes the sticking point for Eric Axelson, because Nicky certainly isn't going to get out of the way. They are dropping a lot of time to the cars ahead too. Joel Lask gets a hurry up here. You never know, there could still be half a chance. Through goes Lask. He finally gets the move made cleanly on Ethan Hill, but he's a long way back from the Taylor Axelson Gibson battle. And remember, he has to beat Eric by a couple of places, 5 seconds his gap. With 2 laps to go, it's going to be difficult to do, but this is not helping Eric's cause. Nicky Taylor, for whatever reason, the pace has dropped off the cliff in that yellow and white Porsche, and Eric Axelson now finds himself once again stuck in a sticky situation.
Yeah, no, he's going to have to sort of bring on all of his years of experience and all those championships that he's ran at the front as well. Start to think about what he has to do here. To be fair to Oliver Gibson, he hasn't given Eric that much of a headache, has he? He's not really driven sort of unsafely or overly aggressively as Oliver Gibson. I think he's just there, happy to be picking up the points. He's not going to get 5th place. Kyle Felvers is probably going to wrap that one up. Although Josh Martin's in 2nd place, but that race 1 not really going his way probably means that Kyle will wrap up that last prize. Not sure where Elliot Dalton-Ayres sits, actually, whether or not he'll lose out on 4th place. But that can all be sorted out afterwards, I'm sure, with all the calculations done by the computer. But yeah, Oliver Gibson not really sort of testing Eric that much, I would say.
This will become a drop score for Elliot. He was, previously dropping 26 points. He scored only 15 tonight and is out of this race. So this will likely become a drop score for him. Axelson has surpassed his drop score. Scott Bugner has not, actually. He's a point less at the moment than his drop score, so this will technically become a drop, but won't make a huge amount of difference. And Joel Lask should just about manage to beat his drop as well, but the fact that we're even talking about drop scores at this stage shows it's not been an ideal night, really, for basically any of the frontrunners in the championship. Down towards Vale and Club comes the Ethan Hill, Joel Lask squabble. Joel just can't get away, can he? He's clearly carrying some damage. Had a message, by the way, from Scott Bugner, which you may have seen in the YouTube chat, saying that his internet dropped out. So I mean, there's plenty of reasons to be angry with internet providers these days, and I think Scott has just found a new reason. The final lap of the season starts. Scott Bugner not a part of the show. His teammate carrying damage, looks unlikely to challenge. It could well be another championship going the way of not this man, but this man's teammate, Eric Axelson. Josh Martin, though, wants a race win.
Yeah, he does, and to be fair, he's caught up to Kyle Felvers. I'm not sure how long this has been going on for, but Kyle having to somewhat think about defending from Josh Martin in that Corvette, given the flash of the lights. Ooh. Although, having said that, he misses the apex by at least 3 postcodes, and, well, Kyle Felvers then can pretty much relax as he gets around the final half of the lap. With Nicky Taylor, Eric Axelson, and Oliver Gibson still backing each other up somewhat in a nice little Porsche sandwich, it seems, but Eric's probably quite happy with the position he finds himself in, with the fact that the counter has gone all the way down to 0. Nicky Taylor defending. I'm not really sure what he's doing on that part of the circuit, to be honest, but he's certainly not made it easy for Eric Axelson.
honestly, if I were Eric, I would pull over, put the indicator on,
Yeah.
let Oliver Gibson through, drop 3 seconds behind these two. He has no business getting involved in this. He doesn't have to take the risk. I'm sure, hopefully, it will all work out okay, but can you imagine if, Nicky Taylor has a moment at the last corner, we get another one of those 3-car sort of concertinas, and Oliver gets into the back of it. I hope that doesn't happen, but it's just a risk that doesn't really need to be taken in my eyes. The leaders getting close together as well. Josh Martin hasn't yet given up hope of a race victory, but we're only now a couple of corners away from the final checkered flag of what's been a fascinating season of racing in the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. Nicky Taylor defending from Axelson in the background. Fingers crossed, everyone. Through the final corner, though, comes Kyle Felvers, his second race victory of the season. Not a championship winning campaign this time, but at least finishes the season off with something to smile about. Josh Martin comes home second, Nicky Taylor third, but Eric Axelson with fourth place, we think has done enough to wrap up the championship. Oliver Gibson comes home in fifth. They did keep it clean to the flag, with Joel Lasker disappointed sixth with a wounded car. Ethan Hill comes home seventh, and well, now we talk amongst ourselves because we've got the best part of half a minute to wait for the rest to come through. Gives us ample time, Jack, to reflect on what was a fantastic final race. A big shame that we had the incidents early on, especially what happened to Scott Bugner. No one really deserves that to be the reason that they lose a championship. But Eric Axelson, no doubt, a worthy champion nonetheless.
Yeah, you can't argue with Axelson winning any championship pretty much, and if you are able to be in and amongst it for 8 rounds solid, then you deserve to be a champion, really, don't you? But it is a bit of a shame for Scott Bugner. I think ultimately the sort of chaos that was at the start of this race was just boiled down to the fact that everybody was so amped up. Even the front runners, told not to get involved with the championship. People slightly overcautious, people slightly overthinking it. And Silverstone, although it's a very wide circuit, into those first couple of corners on the international area, shall we say, the international loop, it does get a little bit tight. It does get a little bit, you have to be quite careful. So, yeah, a bit of a shame, really. But here we go. Eric Axelson, very well done to him.
Absolutely. Eric Axelson, a worthy champion. Who knows what would have happened if we hadn't had the shunts at the start? Who knows what would have happened if if Scott Bugner's internet hadn't dropped out? But there's still every chance we'd have been talking about Axelson as the champion, because he still managed to finish fourth. You have to imagine probably could have forced the issue with Nicky Taylor if he'd have had to, and of course had a teammate ahead who probably would have dropped back and helped as well. So, there's every chance we'd have still ended up at this point. It would have been nice to see the fight genuinely happening out on track. But difficult to say. And nonetheless, Eric Axelson ultimately stayed out of trouble and did what he had to do. So, our second race of the night is done and dusted. We'll hear from our podium finishers and our provisional champion very shortly. But for now, we're going to take a very, very quick break. Back at Silverstone in a moment.
I'm sweating.
Final race of the season, and well, as far as drama is concerned, it more than lived up to the billing. I don't think any of us could quite have predicted everything that happened in that race, but at the end of it, we have a champion provisionally crowned. But before that, We have a podium to get through, and for the second time this season, it's a race victory for Kyle Felvis, who joins us now in the commentary box. Kyle, congratulations on the race victory. Not the championship campaign that I'm sure you would have been hoping for, but 2 race wins, a handful of podiums, and on your day, as quick as anyone else, how much satisfaction can you take from the good results you have been able to take?
Yeah, well, I mean, especially with this car's definitely a handful compared to the rest. I think to be on pace with people is just a miracle, really. And to get 2 race wins and be top 5 in most races in the championship, I think is amazing. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with my championship.
And that race was not easy, actually. Understandably, a lot of our focus was on the championship battle going on behind, but we did see that, you had a bit of a lead at one point, never a massive one, though, and then Josh was coming after you towards the end, wasn't he, as well there? How much were you sort of managing that gap? Were you genuinely in trouble there in the closing stages, or did you always sort of have it in hand?
I mean, I had some more pace underneath me. I could have gone slightly quicker, but I was just trying to play it safe and not make any mistakes. So I think that was definitely making it so Josh was catching her. Josh was really quick tonight. Like with the little practice he did, he was pretty quick, and especially to do it on softs as well. But I think just with Nikki defending against him and me managing to pull that gap, I think I had it covered.
And of course, now we move from GT cars back to touring cars again. How are you feeling about that next championship? First of all, are we going to be seeing you again? And if so, are you going to be one of the championship contenders, do you think, as we were in the last touring car series?
Well, I mean, yeah, I'll definitely be back, but I think whether I'm a championship contender depends on a lot of things. But yeah, hopefully, yeah, we'll see.
Good stuff. Well, a difficult season at times for you, Carl, but it's been nice to see you keeping your head up. 2 race victories, well deserved as well, and we'll see you again next season.
Thanks, Andy.
Kyle then gets the race victory, but as he said, was pushed hard there by the soft-tired shod Josh Martin, who joins Jack.
Yeah, Josh, we'll jump straight onto that soft tyre conundrum, really. You were the only ones who chose to give it a go. What was the thought process there? Because in the second race, particularly, clearly it worked.
Yeah, I hadn't actually done a race run length on the softs, so I had no idea how long they were going to last. I was just really focused on getting a good start, and I think I chose them initially for race 2 because I was 4th on the grid, and I thought I put the softs on and get a good start. I can get up to 2nd. Was my aim, and then I was starting last in that one, so I was like, I've got nothing to lose. I'll stick with them, and yeah, I kind of wished I was on mediums towards the end, but it obviously being on the softs helped me get a really good start. But no, they felt okay.
I was going to say, you mentioned there that you started towards the back in race number 2. Talk to us your perspective of how you got there, because of course race 1 wasn't ideal. First of all, did you accidentally transport yourself back to the pits mid-spin?
Maybe.
Yeah, I thought so. We'll let you off on that one, but talk us through about the spin itself. What was your perspective?
Yeah, see, I got initially it all started from I got a really good launch off the line, and I'd have had a good chance of being higher up the grid, but I did get squeezed into the pit wall, so I lost all my momentum and then dropped a couple of places, and I was getting my way back through, and I went up the inside of Elliot going into the chicane, and from my point of view, I don't really know what happened, to be honest, because I left plenty of room on that final corner, and then just felt like I got smacked on the rear corner, and then obviously spanned the pit wall, and then when I hit the pit wall, I knocked my push the pits button, which I've never done.
I was going to say maybe remap that somewhere a little bit harder to reach next time, Josh, but bit of a shame. You probably wouldn't be able to, with a lot of damage on your car, you probably wouldn't be able to get up to the front end of the order anyway. So, yeah, race 2, big congratulations on that 2nd place. Do you think you could have, with an extra couple of laps, do you think you could have taken Kyle, or was the pace pretty much at its limit at that point?
I don't know, because I set the fastest lap of the race on lap 7, and the softs, my rear left was in the red on the wear gauge, but it didn't feel that bad, and I felt like I was really quick. So I feel, one more lap I might have been able to do something, but then who knows how much more the softs would have dropped off. But no, it's really nice to end on a good strong race.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations, Josh, on the second place in the race. And I believe, no, you just lost out on that last prize-giving position. You ended up in 6th place, unfortunately. But always a pleasure, Josh, and hopefully we'll see you next season.
Cheers. Thank you very much. See you next season.
Yeah, congratulations, Josh Martin, then, who gives away the number 1 for next season, but it only goes the other side of the garage, if you like. We'll get on to our champion-elect in a moment or two, but first, 3rd place finish in that race. And a welcome return to the podium, really, for Nikki Taylor, who joins us now. And Nikki, a bit like your teammate, it's been a trying season, a character-building season, as they like to say in motorsport. This just your 2nd appearance on the podium, but always nice to end the season on a high.
Yeah, I'm so glad to get rid of this car and never drive this car ever again. So we're the race went all right, to be fair. I managed to make my way through at the start, and then it see how it went, and managed to pick off people where I did and when I did, and then got into 2nd behind Kyle and was pressing with Kyle, and then the speed that Corvette had in a straight line and in corners, was just so much more planted than this car. I tried doing the same thing as what Josh was doing before he went past me, and then just couldn't keep up and couldn't do the same things he was doing. So yeah, and then Eric was a pain in my backside for the whole of that race. So I've never defended more in my life to try and keep someone at bay. But eventually I ended up doing it, and I'm very thankful.
You'll be equally thankful, I'm sure, then, to have a return to touring cars. Presumably you will pick one of the front-wheel drive options, knowing you as we do. So how confident are you that you can get back to showing us exactly what you're capable of in the next championship?
If I was doing the whole thing, and if I weren't on holiday for 2 of the rounds, I would be 95% confident I would win it by a mile. Or not by a mile, I would win it and be up there. But I still think, even with missing 2 rounds, I still think I can be up there, and I still think winning it is not off the cards. But yeah, I'm looking at the Toyota because it's front wheel drive, or Toyota or Hyundai. But I'm styling towards the Toyota just because I like the look of it, and also I don't think anyone else will choose it. So I think I can just be in my own little bubble, and if anything goes wrong, I've got no one to blame but myself.
Well, you could always cancel the holiday. I mean, get your priorities right, man. Come on,
I mean, I could, but it's Orlando, so I would rather go to Florida than be on my sim. I will be honest.
I'd love to argue with you there, but I think I might agree with you just about. Nikki, thanks for taking some time to come and talk to us. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you a bit more often next season, but congratulations on ending your season in the GTs with another podium. Well done.
Thank you.
So there are podium finishes. Normally at this point we'd wrap up and go home. We're already at home, you know what I mean. But we've got one more important person to talk to. I'm going to go and get my teeth in whilst Jack Oliphant has a chat to our champion.
Yes, champion yet again, Eric Axelson. Massive congratulations, Eric. After going into this evening 3rd place, to come out on top must feel amazing, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. That is, it's insane. It's crazy. I never thought that would happen. You know, especially not in these cars, in a field that has been so close. You know, through the old championship. So yeah, I'm super happy.
I was going to say, we've been talking about over the course of this evening that 4 race wins to your name, multiple pole positions and everything like that. But to us, it hasn't felt, apart from Bahrain, it hasn't quite felt like the dominating Eric Axelson that we're used to seeing in the touring cars and the Civics and everything like that. We're almost seeing you under the radar in this championship. What was the sort of secret of sort of the consistency to keep coming back from slight mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, I had my highs and lows this championship for sure. As you said, but I mean, yes, I think in the second half, I kind of stopped like doing stupid mistakes and just to pick safe points, and I think it paid off in the end. And then, of course, tonight is a big part of it, and also the first round, of course, and that helps, So yeah, super happy. Yeah.
I was going to ask, obviously, you started off with such a high at Bahrain. We mentioned it a couple of times tonight. We mentioned it many times over the season. Pole position, fastest lap in race 1, I believe it was, and race victory in race number 2 as well. To go from that to what was quite a struggle for a couple of weeks, mentally, how much did that sort of take its toll? Had you written the championship off at that point?
Well, halfway through after Monza and Istanbul, and then it was Kialami. It wasn't a great round for me. At that point, I was like, I give up almost, you know. But then, as somehow I could bring myself, I don't know how you say it, bring myself together and get back into it. So yeah, it feels great.
I was going to say, I think you said it perfectly there, to be fair. And last little bit, touching on the race that we've just had, the one that won you the championship. Did you know that Scott Bugner had disconnected? Did you know that Joel Lask had a damaged car? Because, of course, you were right in the thick of a load of Porsches who just wouldn't seem to leave you alone.
No, I mean, I wasn't sure what happened there. I wasn't a part of the incident, I think. I just saw, Scott going off, and I don't know what happened to Joel, to be honest. So it was not the race 2 I hoped for. I was hoping for a hard, clean, good race, but that's racing, right? And I think I had my my share of a bad
Bad luck.
cases of this championship too. So I mean, it is what it is. Just a shame it was the last race, So yeah.
I was going to say though, but when you sat in amongst all those different Porsches, with Oliver Gibson behind you pretty much constantly, with Nicky Taylor defending for his heart and soul and everything like that, what's going through your head? Because we were saying it's a really difficult position to be in.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, obviously, Nicky was not gonna let me by, so I thought, I was pretty sure that I could stay, behind him. And behind me, I had Oliver, and he's such a clean gent, So I was, it felt pretty good still. I thought, if I can stay here, I probably have it. So, yeah, that was my plan.
Well, it certainly worked to a T, Eric. A massive congratulations on what was a very entertaining evening, but a bigger one for obviously taking home the championship. You are the Cammus Simulation GTV3 champion for VRRC. Well done, Eric Axelson.
Yeah, thank you, Jack and Andy.
Can I just come in for a second, guys? Firstly, the first thing I want to say is Scott Bugner, I'm gutted for him. We were really looking forward to a fantastic race, and unfortunately he had internet issues. But do you know what? Rather than being seen as arse, he's come straight back on and he's congratulated Eric. So I just want to say well done, Scott, for being a true gentleman for doing that. And the second thing I want to say is, Eric, well done, mate. You're as humble as ever, but congratulations on your provisional championship, mate.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I am gutted for Scott too. That was a shame.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Well, big congratulations. Eric Axelson, a worthy champion in the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. And we look forward to seeing him return to try and defend that title in the touring cars coming up in just a few weeks' time. Well, let's confirm, shall we then, how the championship standings look. This is before any post-race penalties and whatnot are applied, but we don't anticipate too much change at the very pointy end. By 5 points in the end, Eric Axelson is the champion. He manages to overhaul Joel Lask, who finishes second and steals that second place from his his teammate, Scott Bugner, by 3 points in the end. 8 points covering the top three after 16 races. Fantastic stuff. Elliot Dalton-Ayres will hold on to fourth position provisionally ahead of Carl Felvers, who gets himself into the top five. Remember, they will both win some time at the VRRC Centre, which I'm sure they will both enjoy immensely. Josh Martin in 6th position, the reigning champion after a disappointing second half of the season, just missing out on the top 5, but will of course be entered into that prize draw, as will Oliver Gibson, Nicky Taylor, Reece Bell, and Ethan Hill, who complete the top 10 at season's end, but extremely tight towards the front of the championship right the way through, really. And well, Eric Axelson, who led early in the season, leads at the end of the season, but that doesn't really do this championship a whole lot of justice. Well, as we've said, we've got a couple of weeks off for broadcasting, at least, but the action never stops here at the VRRC, does it, Jack? Plenty for people to get involved with before we're back racing again at the end of April.
Absolutely, and ladies and gentlemen, I've been informed that Andy McEwen has a pizza in the oven, so we're going to have to make this fast. Time Attack Formula 3 is what we're currently running around in, the Red Bull Ring, but followed by a fun race in the IndyCar around Atlanta Motor Speedway. That is next Tuesday, I believe, the 21st of March. No, it was yesterday, so that is slightly out of date. Truck racing, although we are not broadcasting it, we will still be doing the special events for truck racing. Even half tempted to get involved myself, considering I won't have anything else to do on a Wednesday night, especially with the international break in the football. We're on to the Formula 2s after that, from the 3rd to the 14th of April. So as soon as April hits, we'll be off to the Bahrain International Circuit. We've already seen it for the GTV3 Championship. Well, now you can attack it in the Formula 2 car if you wish, until we finally round out the time attacks in the single seaters with the Formula 1 car around the Mugello circuit from the 17th to the 28th of April. But of course, after the truck racing towards the end of April, we will start our new main championship, which is of course the touring cars with hybrid, which is appearing on your screen a little bit bigger now, actually, with a varied amount of cars, a mix of rear wheel, front wheel drive, and it's going to be fairly fascinating. Same format as what we've had at the GTV3, the most sort of popular VRRC format, with qualifying only 15 minutes and 2 races of 20. We visit all of the nation's favourite tracks as well: Donington, Brands Hatch, Croft, Alton Park, Snetterton, Thruxton, Brands Hatch, and Silverstone. And when you line them all up like that, Andy, it really does go to show that MSV are certainly dominating in the in the sort of the amount of tracks that they own.
Can I just come in again? Sorry, Jack. The IndyCar, yeah. The IndyCar race is next Tuesday. We did one Tuesday this week, but we're actually doing an oval next Tuesday as well because it was so popular this week on the track we did. So you did get it right first time. It is next week, or it is Tuesday next week.
In my defence, on that graphic, it said yesterday.
Okay, all right. And then Lewis, could you throw up the last graphic again for us, please? Can you throw up the last graphic, Lewis?
Tuesday, the 21st of March.
Where are you seeing this, Jack?
So the other thing I want to say is, so it's the 28th of March, but anyway, the other thing I want to say is, look at those liveries on the Formula cars. I just want to give a shout out to Lewis because he does a really, really good job on doing these liveries for us, and they look absolutely amazing. So thank you, Lewis, for doing those for us, because he does it out of the goodness of his heart, and I really appreciate it. So firstly, I just wanted to correct the fun race next Tuesday night is the IndyCar on the oval at Atlanta, and then just to say, wow, look at those liveries. Thank you.
Yes, they look very good indeed, and we look forward to seeing more great liveries on our touring cars later on in the year as well, which does start on the 26th of April, I think. That's when we're going to be turning up for our first round. Anyway, and we're all looking forward to it as well. Touring cars always a real highlight of VRRC racing, and as you can see, the new shaped touring cars, rear and front wheel drive, going to be in use. That's going to be an awful lot of fun. We mentioned a few times, particularly when talking about prizes tonight, that the VRRC Centre is available, and has, indeed some prizes have now been given away to some of our drivers to go and utilise the facilities there. But they are not the only ones who can utilise the facilities at the VRRC, because they provide race and sim driver coaching both online, in the sims at the VRRC base, and out on track as well, where you can work on all of the essentials: car setup, circuit knowledge, consistency, etc., etc. Basically, if you want to become a better sim racer, the VRRC is the place to go. Head over to their website or drop them an email on the website down below, info@virtualrealityracingclub.com, and the information can all be gathered on how you can get down there and sample what is a fantastic facility. We all had the chance to go down and visit a few weeks ago, had the time of our lives down there, and we're just messing around and having some fun, really. But if you wanted to go down there and make yourself a better driver, that is absolutely something you are able to do. So head to the website, drop them an email, and get in touch. So that is now, I think, everything that we need to talk about tonight. Jack, your final thoughts on what has been a fantastic season. I've really enjoyed the GT cars. It's been a different style of racing on different tracks that, as you made the point earlier, we don't often get to go and race at, and it produced a typically thrilling finale.
Yeah, no, I loved the variety of tracks that we had, because there are a lot of tracks that you'll have heard of, but we actually don't race on very often, like we mentioned many times before. The cars are a lot more powerful than we're used to as well. Everything's a little bit more quicker. They're a bit bigger as well, and they make everybody think a little bit more with the different tire choices. It's really been thrilling. I've really enjoyed it. The sort of the bopped nature of all the cars means it's been really equal as well, but then equally Watkins Glen, some cars were a little bit quicker than they were at, say, Fuji or Kyle Army or somewhere like that. So yeah, I've loved every minute of it. It's a bit of a shame it ended like it did for Scott Bugner and Joel Lask, but Eric Axelson, I don't think anybody can complain, is a worthy champion.
Absolutely. Could not have said it better myself. Well, a big thank you to everyone who has helped put this championship together and the broadcasts together as well. To Rich Hayden, who oversees the whole thing. To Lewis Edwards, who's done a stunning job on the broadcasts as well all season long. And of course, to my partner in crime, Jack Oliphant. We'll all be back again for the touring cars in a few weeks' time. If you want to come and race along in the special event, then do get involved too. We may well see you there. But for now, from everyone here at the VRRC, if we don't see you again until the touring cars, have a pleasant start to the springtime, which I think is just about upon us now. And we'll see you again in a few weeks' time. Goodbye.
Woo!